Our story begins not in a grand palace, but in the bustling, chaotic world of a slave market. Imagine, if you will, a young boy, far from his home in the Caucasus region. His name was Barsbay. He had been captured, sold and transported hundreds of miles away to a land he did not know. This was a common fate for many young men in the 14th century. They were part of a vast human trade network. Barsbay was what was known as a Circassian, a person from the northern Caucasus. He was destined for a life of servitude in the powerful Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. His future looked bleak, defined by obedience and the will of others. But, this was no ordinary servitude. Barsbay was purchased by a powerful Mamluk emir named Dukmak. This purchase was not for domestic labor or farm work. Instead, the young Barsbay was destined for the military barracks of Cairo. He was to be trained as a Mamluk, a slave soldier. This was a system that turned human property into the most elite fighting force in the Islamic world. Young Barsbay would have been taught the arts of war, how to ride a horse with expert skill, how to wield a sword, and the complex strategies of medieval combat. He was being forged into a weapon, a living tool for his master. Life in the barracks would have been incredibly tough. It was a world of strict discipline, intense physical training, and fierce competition. Boys like Barsbay had to prove their worth every single day. They were cut off from their past lives, their families, and their native languages. Their loyalty was demanded not by their homeland, but by their master and their fellow Mamluks. This shared experience created an incredibly strong bond, a brotherhood forged in hardship and shared ambition. It was within this crucible that the young enslaved boy began to show signs of something more, a spark of intelligence and leadership that set him apart from the rest. From these harsh and unpromising beginnings, an extraordinary journey was about to unfold. The slave boy from the Caucasus was on a path that few could have ever imagined. He was not just learning to survive, he was learning to thrive in a system that was both brutal and full of opportunity. This was the first crucial step in a long and arduous climb, a climb that would eventually take him from the anonymity of the barracks all the way to the very pinnacle of power. He would become the master of the empire he was brought to serve. A story that seems almost too incredible to be true. So how could a slave possibly become a king? It sounds like something from a fairy tale, doesn't it? But in Mamluk Egypt, this was the reality. The Mamluk system was one of the most unusual political structures in all of history. The word Mamluk itself means one who is owned in Arabic. The rulers of Egypt systematically imported non-Muslim boys, usually from the Turkic Kipchak steppes or the Circassian mountains. These boys were raised in a closed military society, converted to Islam, and trained to become elite soldiers. They had no local family ties, which meant their loyalty was, in theory, solely to the Sultan. This system was designed to create a ruling class that was completely dependent on the state. Unlike a traditional aristocracy that passed power down through families, the Mamluks replenished their ranks with each generation of new slave imports. Once a Mamluk completed his training, he was granted his freedom. He could then own property, marry, and most importantly, begin his own military career. This was the ladder of power. A freed Mamluk could become an officer, then an emir, a commander or prince, and from there, the path to the very top was open. The ultimate prize was the Sultanate itself. This constant competition was both the system's greatest strength and its most significant weakness. It ensured that only the most cunning, ruthless, and capable men reached the top. There was no room for weak or incompetent heirs who inherited their position by birthright alone. Every Mamluk emir knew that he could, with enough power and support, make a bid for the throne. This created a state of perpetual political tension. The court of the Sultan was a hotbed of intrigue, conspiracies, and shifting allegiances. One day you could be the Sultan's favorite commander, the next you could be imprisoned or executed. It was within this high-stakes environment that Barsbay learned to play the game. He saw how emirs formed factions, how they used wealth to buy loyalty, and how a moment of weakness could lead to a swift downfall. The Mamluk system was a meritocracy of the most brutal kind. It rewarded strength, ambition, and political skill above all else. For a young man like Barsbay, who possessed all of these qualities in abundance, the system was not a prison but a pathway. It offered a route to power that would have been unthinkable anywhere else in the world at that time. Barsbay's rise was not a sudden explosion onto the scene. It was a slow, calculated climb through the Mamluk ranks. After being freed, he served his masters with loyalty and distinction. He proved himself to be a capable soldier and a shrewd administrator. He was given increasingly important positions, moving from a low-ranking soldier to a trusted member of the court. Under Sultan al-Muayyad Sheikh, he was appointed as the governor of Tripoli, a major city in modern-day Lebanon. This was a significant promotion. It gave him experience in governing a province, managing finances, and leading his own contingent of Mamluks. His big opportunity came after the death of al-Muayyad Sheikh. The Sultanate was plunged into a period of instability, which was very common in the Mamluk system. A succession crisis erupted. The throne was first taken by a child, Ahmad II, the infant son of the previous sultan. Of course, a baby could not rule, so a regent was needed to govern in his name. This is where the real power struggle began. The most powerful emirs in Cairo all vied for control, each wanting to be the power behind the throne. Barsbay, who was by now a powerful and respected emir, was a key player in these political maneuvers. Initially, another emir named Tatar seized power, deposing the child sultan. But Tatar's reign was very short-lived. He died after only a few months. He, in turn, named his own young son, Muhammad III, as his successor. Once again, Egypt had a child on the throne, and the cycle of instability continued. Barsbay had been carefully building his support base among the other Circassian Mamluks. He saw his chance. He had the military backing, the political experience, and the ambition needed to make his move. He acted decisively, deposing the young boy and claiming the Sultanate for himself in the year 1422. It was a classic Mamluk power grab. It was not a rebellion against the system, but rather the system working exactly as it was designed to. The strongest and most capable emir had risen to the top. When Barsbay ascended the throne, he took the regnal title Al-Ashraf, meaning the most noble. He was no longer the boy from the Caucasus or just another emir. He was now Al-Ashraf Barsbay, the absolute ruler of a vast and wealthy empire that stretched from Egypt to Syria. His long and patient climb was over. Now, the real challenge began. Holding on to power and shaping the empire in his own image. Once he became Sultan, Barsbay moved quickly to consolidate his power. He knew that the same system that had brought him to the throne could just as easily cast him down. His first priority was to eliminate any potential rivals. He had seen how factions and conspiracies could topple a ruler, so he systematically removed or sidelined the emirs who might challenge his authority. He replaced them with men who were personally loyal to him, many of whom he had purchased and trained himself. This created a power structure that was centered entirely on his own person, reducing the risk of a coup from within the Mamluk elite. Barsbay also understood the importance of a strong and efficient administration. The Mamluk state was a complex bureaucracy, and he wanted to ensure it ran smoothly and served his interests. He undertook a review of the Iqta system, which was the method of paying his emirs and soldiers. This system granted them the rights to tax revenue from specific parcels of land. By reorganizing these land grants, he could reward his loyal followers and punish those he distrusted. This was a powerful tool for maintaining control, as an emir's wealth and power depended directly on the sultan's favor. It was a clever way to keep everyone in line. He also took a keen interest in the justice system. A stable and predictable legal framework was essential for maintaining order throughout the empire. While the Mamluk military class often operated under its own codes, the civilian population was governed by Islamic law or Sharia. Barsbay supported the qadis or judges and ensured that the courts were functioning. This was not just about piety, it was about good governance. A populace that felt it had access to justice was less likely to cause unrest. By projecting an image as a just and pious ruler, he strengthened his legitimacy in the eyes of his subjects. Ultimately, Barsbay's political approach was one of centralization and control. He strengthened the office of the Sultan, making it the undeniable heart of the state. He was an absolute monarch in every sense of the word. His reign was marked by a relative internal stability that was rare in the tumultuous world of Mamluk politics. He successfully navigated the treacherous currents of the court, balancing the ambitions of his powerful emirs with the need for a strong, centralized government. His firm hand ensured that for 16 years his authority was never seriously challenged, allowing him to focus on other pressing matters of the state. Sultan Barsbay had a reputation for being, well, intensely interested in money. Some contemporary chroniclers even called him greedy. But his focus on the economy was about more than just personal wealth. It was about state power. He understood that a strong military and a stable government required a full treasury. Egypt's economy was robust, but Barsbay sought to control it more directly than any of his predecessors. One of his most significant and honestly controversial moves was to establish state monopolies over key industries. He declared that the production and sale of sugar, a hugely profitable commodity, was now under the direct control of the Sultan. This meant that private producers had to sell their raw sugarcane to the state at a fixed low price. The government would then process it in its own refineries and sell the finished sugar at a much higher price, both domestically and for export. The profits flowed directly into the Sultan's coffers. While this was a brilliant move for the state treasury, it was devastating for many private merchants and producers who were essentially cut out of the market. This policy demonstrated Barsbay's ruthless approach to economics. The financial health of the state, and therefore his own power, came before the prosperity of individual subjects. He applied this same monopolistic strategy to other goods as well, including pepper and other valuable spices that passed through Egypt. Furthermore, Barsbay reformed the currency. He introduced new, high-quality gold dinars and silver dirhams that became known for their purity. This helped to stabilize the monetary system, which had been plagued by debased and inconsistent coinage. A reliable currency facilitated trade and gave merchants confidence, which was crucial for the international commerce that was, really, the lifeblood of Egypt's economy. It was a practical reform that had a lasting positive impact on daily economic life. Barsbay also frequently resorted to levying extraordinary taxes, especially on the Christian and Jewish minority communities, as well as wealthy merchants. These were often imposed to fund his military campaigns or construction projects. These measures, combined with his state monopolies, made him a very rich sultan, but also caused significant resentment among the population. His economic policies were a double-edged sword. They provided the immense wealth needed to fund his armies, defeat his enemies, and build his magnificent monuments, but they also placed a heavy burden on the people he ruled. Egypt in the 15th century held a golden ticket. It was, the geographic bottleneck through which the world's most lucrative trade passed. Spices from India and Southeast Asia, pepper, cloves, nutmeg, traveled across the Indian Ocean, up the Red Sea and into Egypt. From there they were sold to Venetian and Genoese merchants, who distributed them throughout Europe at a huge markup. Barsbay looked at this flow of wealth and decided that the Sultanate was not getting a large enough share. He was determined to exert total control over this vital trade route and make it a state enterprise. His most audacious move came in 1426. he declared that the spice trade was now a state monopoly. All spices arriving at the Red Sea port of Jeddah had to be sold to the Sultan's agents at a fixed price. The state then transported the spices to Alexandria and sold them to the European traders at a much, much higher price. He effectively cut out the middlemen, the private Carimid merchants who had traditionally dominated this trade for centuries. This was a revolutionary and aggressive policy. It fundamentally restructured the most important commercial activity in the entire region, funneling vast profits directly to the Sultan. Naturally, this did not go down well with everyone. The European traders, particularly the Venetians, were furious. They were now forced to buy from a single seller, the Sultan, who could dictate the price. They tried to negotiate, protest, and even threatened to boycott Egyptian ports. But Barsbay held firm. He knew they had no alternative. The overland routes were more dangerous and expensive. For a time, the Europeans had to accept his terms. He had successfully cornered the market on the world's most desirable luxury goods. This bold strategy made him one of the wealthiest rulers of his time. Barsbay's control of the Red Sea was not just about economics, it was also about political power. To enforce his monopoly, he had to project Mamluk naval power into the region. He sent his fleet to assert dominance over the port of Jeddah, which was technically under the control of the Sharif of Mecca. This brought the holy cities of Mecca and Medina more firmly under Mamluk influence. By mastering the spice trade, Barsbay not only filled his treasury but also expanded the geopolitical reach of his empire, proving that economic and military power were two sides of the same coin. Like many great rulers, Sultan Barsbay understood that power was not just about armies and treasuries. It was also about legacy. He wanted to leave his mark on Cairo, the magnificent capital of his empire. The best way to do that was through architecture. He embarked on an ambitious building program, commissioning mosques, madrasas, those are theological schools, and mausoleums that would stand as testaments to his piety and power. This was a tradition for Mamluk sultans who competed with one another to build the most splendid monuments. Barsbay's contributions are a key part of Cairo's incredible architectural heritage. His most famous project is the Madrasa Mausoleum of Al-Ashraf Barsbay, located on the bustling Al-Muizz Street in the heart of historic Cairo. Completed in 1425, it is a stunning example of Mamluk design. The complex was not just a tomb for himself and his family, it was a vibrant public institution. It included a madrasa that taught the 4 schools of Sunni Islamic law, as well as a khanqa, which was a residence for Sufi mystics. By combining his final resting place with centers of learning and worship, Barsbay presented himself as a patron of religion and scholarship, a key part of a sultan's public image. The architectural style of his buildings is distinctive. It showcases the classic features of the Mamluk period: intricate stonework, elegant minarets topped with finely carved domes, and beautiful marble paneling. His mausoleum, in particular, is noted for its exquisite carved stone dome, a hallmark of the Circassian Mamluk era. These buildings were not just functional, they were statements. Their soaring height and elaborate decoration dominated the skyline, constantly reminding the city's inhabitants of the Sultan's wealth, taste, and authority. They were a form of permanent propaganda carved in stone. Barsbay also built another significant complex in the vast northern cemetery of Cairo, often called the City of the Dead. This funerary complex also included a mosque and residences, creating a self-contained community dedicated to prayer and remembrance. His patronage extended beyond his own monuments. He also undertook restorations of other important religious sites, including the revered Al-Azhar Mosque. Through this extensive building program, Barsbay physically and permanently inscribed his name into the fabric of his capital city, ensuring that he would be remembered for centuries to come. A sultan's reign was never peaceful. It was a constant battle against threats from all sides. Barsbay was a warrior sultan, and he had to prove his military prowess to secure his empire. One of his most significant external challenges came from the Kingdom of Cyprus. For years, European pirates based on the island had been raiding the Egyptian and Syrian coasts, disrupting trade and shipping. They were a persistent thorn in the side of the Mamluk Sultanate. Previous sultans had tried and failed to deal with them. Barsbay decided to solve the problem once and for all. Between 1424 and 1426, Barsbay launched 3 separate naval invasions of Cyprus. The first 2 were successful raids that brought back immense booty and prisoners. The third and final campaign was a full-scale conquest. The Mamluk army landed, defeated the Cypriot forces in battle, and sacked the capital, Nicosia. They even captured the king of Cyprus, Janus, and brought him back to Cairo in chains. He was paraded through the streets in a humiliating spectacle before being forced to pay a massive ransom. This victory was a huge propaganda coup for Barsbay. It ended the piracy and turned Cyprus into a Mamluk vassal state, forced to pay an annual tribute. On his eastern frontier, Barsbay had to contend with the growing power of Timur's successors in Persia and Central Asia, as well as the Ak-Koyunlu Turkmen Federation. These powerful rivals frequently threatened Mamluk territory in Syria and northern Iraq. Barsbay engaged in a combination of diplomacy and military expeditions to keep them in check. He was a pragmatic leader who preferred to avoid costly, large-scale wars when possible, but he was not afraid to use his army to defend his borders. His strong military posture maintained the integrity of the empire's eastern flank throughout his reign. Internally, Barsbay also faced challenges. The Bedouin tribes of the Egyptian desert often raided settled areas and disrupted trade caravans. He sent punitive expeditions to subdue them and bring them under state control. He also had to manage the ever-present threat of plague, which swept through the region several times during his reign, and the occasional popular discontent caused by his heavy taxes. By successfully managing these diverse internal and external threats, Barsbay ensured the security and stability of his realm. He proved that he was not just a shrewd politician, but also a formidable military commander. Sultan al-Ashraf Barsbay died in 1438 after ruling for 16 years. He left behind an empire that was wealthier, more centralized, and more militarily secure than the one he had inherited. His reign is often seen as a high point of the later Circassian Mamluk period. He was the quintessential Mamluk ruler, a former slave who rose through the ranks through his own skill and ruthlessness, seized power in a coup, and then governed with an iron fist. His story is a powerful illustration of the unique social mobility that the Mamluk system, for all its brutality, made possible. His legacy is complex and can be seen in different ways. For the state, he was a resounding success. He filled the treasury, crushed external enemies, expanded Mamluk influence, and left behind magnificent monuments. His economic policies, particularly the state monopolies, brought incredible wealth to the government, allowing it to function and project power. He is remembered as a strong and effective ruler who brought stability during a turbulent era. His successful conquest of Cyprus, in particular, was celebrated for generations as a major triumph of Mamluk arms against a Christian foe. However, for many of his subjects, his reign was a time of great economic hardship. His monopolies crippled private merchants, and his heavy taxes placed a severe burden on the general population. The chroniclers of his time paint a mixed picture. They praise his military victories and piety, but also criticize his avarice and the harshness of his economic measures. He was a ruler who prioritized the power of the state above the welfare of the individual. This tension between a strong state and a prosperous society is a recurring theme throughout history, and Barsbay's reign is a fascinating case study. Today, Barsbay is remembered primarily through the beautiful buildings he left behind in Cairo. His mosque and mausoleum still stand as proud landmarks, attracting tourists and worshippers alike. They are a tangible link to this powerful 15th century ruler. His story serves as a powerful reminder of the incredible dynamism of Islamic history and the unique political experiment of the Mamluk Sultanate. He was a man who went from being property to being the master of one of the world's great empires, a testament to his own ambition and the extraordinary system that made his rise possible.